It was a moment that rocked Hollywood and left viewers stunned. The legendary Anthony Hopkins, an icon of cinema whose career spans decades of masterpieces, clashed with provocative host Joy Behar on her talk show The Spotlight. What was supposed to be a routine interview to promote Hopkins' new film turned into an unprecedented drama that went down in television history. No one was prepared for how events would unfold when Behar, known for her sharp tongue and unapologetic questions, crossed the line. This story is about dignity, principles, and the fight against cynicism for the sake of ratings. Watch until the end to find out how it all ended, and leave a comment with your thoughts. The Spotlight studio buzzed with anticipation, like the calm before a storm. Blinding spotlights flooded the stage, and the audience, a mix of fans and skeptics, whispered in excitement. In the center sat Anthony Hopkins, elegant in a flawless navy suit, his faint smile masking the weariness of endless interviews. His presence radiated a calm dignity, the kind only someone who's weathered both fame and criticism could embody. Across from him was Joy Behar, her eyes glinting with cold mischief, her smile betraying a predatory readiness to provoke. Behind the scenes, producers exchanged nervous glances, sensing that tonight's show could be explosive. Tension hung in the air, and the cameras, like hunters, waited to capture the storm. "So, Sir Anthony," Behar began, her voice dripping with saccharine irony, "your new film, Shadows of the Past, is already being called a triumphant return. But don't you think it's just another Oscar bait project?" Hopkins tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing, but his response was polite. "I don't think about awards, Joy," he said. "This film is about the human soul, about battling one's demons. I hope audiences feel that." The audience applauded, but Behar's smile widened, like a cat cornering a mouse. "Soul, demons, very poetic," she said, glancing at her notes. "But let's be real. You recently donated $1 million to charity. Is it true that was just a PR stunt to distract from your, let's say, controversial past?" The audience gasped. Hopkins froze, his fingers tightening slightly on the armrests. His face remained composed, but a spark of indignation flashed in his eyes. "My charity isn't about PR," he replied quietly but firmly. "I do it because I believe in helping people who need it." Behar leaned forward, her voice sharpening. "Oh, come on, Anthony. You know how Hollywood works. It's all a performance for the cameras, isn't it?" She turned to the audience, winking. "Don't we love it when stars play the saint?" The crowd erupted in nervous laughter. Hopkins' lips tightened, his gaze growing colder. The audience sensed the shift, and whispers rippled through the rows. The cameras zoomed in, catching every micro-expression on the actor's face. Behar, sensing the tension, decided to dig deeper. Her voice turned sarcastic, almost venomous. "You know, Anthony, people talk. Some say your career is coasting on past glories. The Silence of the Lambs was 30 years ago. Aren't you just milking your great actor image?" Hopkins inhaled slowly, his fingers tightening further. "I'm not milking anything," he said, his voice calm but laced with steel. "I work because I love what I do. And I don't let others define my worth." The audience fell silent, sensing the line being drawn. Behar, however, didn't back down. She leaned back in her chair, her smile growing bolder. "Oh, that's cute. But let's talk about something juicier. Your political views, for instance. You once said you don't believe in modern politics. Is it true you're just dodging accountability to protect your image?" The audience gasped again, louder this time. One of the co-hosts, a younger man in a bright suit, tried to intervene. "Joy, maybe we should get back to the film?" But she waved him off like a fly. Hopkins leaned forward, his eyes blazing with quiet fury. "You want to talk about accountability?" he said, his voice low and piercing. "I answer for my actions every day. Do you? You hide behind a microphone and throw accusations to boost your ratings." The audience erupted in applause, but Behar didn't flinch. "Oh, please, Anthony," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're no saint. Your parties in the 90s, your, let's call them scandalous romances. Isn't it true you're just playing the part of the perfect gentleman?" The studio fell deathly silent. Even the producers backstage froze, their eyes wide with shock. Hopkins sat back, his face unreadable, but a storm brewed in his gaze. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the tension that threatened to tear the air apart. "Are you done?" he asked quietly, but his voice carried danger. Behar, sensing she was losing ground, smiled wider. "Oh, I'm just getting started," she replied, her tone sickly sweet. "People want the truth, Anthony. You don't mind the truth, do you?" A text overlay appeared on the screen. How would you respond to such a question? The audience held its breath, waiting for Hopkins' reaction. The tension had reached its peak, and the cameras, like predators, awaited the climax. Continued escalation. Hopkins rose slowly from his chair, his movements calm but brimming with dignity. "I don't mind the truth," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "But I do mind my life being dissected for your show. You're not after truth, Joy. You're after a scandal." The audience erupted in applause, but Behar merely scoffed. "Scandal?" she retorted, her voice rising. "This show is about reality, Anthony. People are tired of your polished Hollywood fairy tale. They want to know who you really are." Hopkins locked eyes with her, his gaze so piercing that even Behar faltered for a moment. "Who I really am," he repeated, his voice deeper, almost hypnotic. "I'm a man who's lived a life full of mistakes and triumphs. I don't hide from that. But I won't let you or anyone else humiliate me for a few minutes of fame." The audience roared with applause, louder than before. The co-host tried again to intervene, but Behar cut him off sharply. "Oh, come on, Anthony, don't play the victim. You knew what you were signing up for when you came on this show." Hopkins smiled, a thin, almost predatory smile that made Behar lean back in her chair. "I came here to talk about art," he said, his voice calm but powerful. "But you, Joy, turned this into a circus. And I'm not your clown." The cameras zoomed in on Behar's face, which briefly lost its bravado. The audience froze, waiting for what would come next. A text overlay flashed. Would you stand with Anthony in this moment? The tension in the studio was palpable, and everyone knew the climax was imminent. The Spotlight studio was on the brink of eruption. The tension between Anthony Hopkins and Joy Behar had reached a level where the air seemed to crackle with electricity. The cameras buzzed, capturing every detail. Behar, her smile betraying growing unease, and Hopkins' burning gaze, a mix of anger and unyielding dignity. The audience, torn between shock and awe, couldn't look away. Backstage, producers whispered frantically into headsets, debating whether to stop the show, but the director waved them off. "Keep rolling, this is gold." Behar, sensing her grip slipping, doubled down. She leaned back in her chair, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, Anthony, you play the wounded gentleman so well," she said, her eyes glinting with malice. "But let's talk about what people really care about. Your relationships. All those rumors about your romances back in the day. Isn't it true you left a trail of broken hearts?" The audience gasped so loudly it echoed like a wave. The co-host, a young man named Trevor, tried to intervene again, his voice trembling with discomfort. "Joy, maybe we should." But Behar cut him off with a sharp wave. "Trevor, let me finish. People want the truth, not this polished Hollywood fairy tale." Hopkins sat still, his fingers gripping the armrests tightly. His face remained impassive, but his eyes burned with a storm. He leaned forward slowly, his voice low and piercing, like a knife through the silence. "You want the truth, Joy?" he asked, his tone dangerous. "The truth is I'm a man who's made mistakes. I don't deny that. But I won't let you rummage through my life to feed your audience sensations." The audience fell silent, sensing the line had been crossed. Even Trevor, who had tried to stay neutral, looked stunned. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the tension that could shatter the air. "Are you finished?" Hopkins asked quietly, his voice laced with menace. Behar, feeling the tide turn, smiled wider. "Oh, I'm just getting started," she replied, her tone venomously sweet. "People want the truth, Anthony. You don't mind the truth, do you?" A text overlay appeared. How would you respond to Behar's accusations? The audience held its breath, waiting for Hopkins' move. The tension had reached its boiling point, and the cameras were ready for the explosion. Hopkins stood, his posture straight, his presence radiating dignity. He scanned the audience slowly, as if addressing each person individually. Then he turned to Behar, his voice deep, almost theatrical, but brimming with raw passion. I came here to talk about art, about a film that explores the human soul, he began, his words ringing like a sermon. But you, Joy, turned this into an arena for personal attacks. You think you can humiliate me, my career, my principles, for a few minutes of fame. But I won't let you. The audience sat in stunned silence, hanging on his every word. Behar opened her mouth to respond, but Hopkins raised a hand, silencing her. You've shown who you really are, he continued, his voice trembling with anger but steady. You don't seek truth. You hunt for weaknesses to exploit. But here's the thing, Joy, I'm not weak. I've stood before cameras, critics, the world, and I'm still here. And I won't let you or anyone else degrade me for your show. The audience erupted in applause so loud it drowned out everything else. Behar sat frozen, her face pale, her hands clutching her notes nervously. Trevor, trying to defuse the situation, stood and spoke. Anthony, we really appreciate your candor. But his words were lost in the ovation. Hopkins turned to the audience, his eyes blazing with resolve. I'm not here to play games, he said, his voice quieter but piercing. I'm here to remind you all that dignity isn't something you can take away. And I won't let this show or anyone else take mine. With that, he turned and walked off the stage, his steps confident yet calm. The studio plunged into silence, broken only by the audience's whispers and Behar's feeble attempts to recover. Well, that was unexpected, she stammered, her voice shaky. But you know, this show is about honesty. Her words faded into the noise. The cameras zoomed in on her rattled expression, then panned to the empty chair where Hopkins had sat. The audience buzzed, producers argued backstage, and a text overlay appeared. Did Anthony do the right thing by walking off? This confrontation on the spotlight became a moment etched in television history. Anthony Hopkins, a star defined not just by talent but by unwavering dignity, proved that even in a world where media hunt for sensations, one can stay true to oneself. His exit wasn't an escape but a triumph, a statement that no one has the right to degrade another for ratings. Joy Behar, with her cynical attacks, was left in the shadows, her justifications only highlighting her toxicity. This moment served as a reminder, in a world where media often cross boundaries, self-respect is the ultimate weapon. Subscribe to catch more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of Joy Behar's behavior? Were her questions justified, or was she just chasing sensationalism? Did Anthony Hopkins do the right thing by leaving the studio, or should he have stayed and fought? Why do hosts resort to personal attacks for ratings? Drop a comment with what you'd do in Anthony's shoes, and hit the like button if you're on his side.